But Todd is heard daily on hundreds of radio stations around the nation. He also writes a column and hosts a digital show for FoxNews.com. Todd also makes regular appearances on Fox News Channel and Fox Business Network. He's the author of 4 books, including this new book, The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again. That's us, we're the deplorables. But in fact, I was the first person that Hillary called a deplorable in this campaign. It was back in I've never said that publicly before, but back in 2015, when I reached for my gun in my back pocket, she called me a deplorable for anyway. All right, but I'm proud of that. But he's the author of 4 books and is a frequent speaker, as I said. Todd's journalism has been honored by the Associated Press, the Radio, Television, News Directors Association, and the National Religious Broadcasters. Please welcome to Liberty, Todd Starnes.
Well, thank you, and it is great to be back at Liberty University, surrounded by so many deplorable Americans. And I want to give a special shout out to my home state, the volunteer state of Tennessee. I know we've got a few folks out there from Tennessee. Well, I bring you greetings from the Fox News corner of the world, and I wanted you to know something. I've been looking forward to this day because you folks here in this arena are some of the bravest and most honorable people that I know. I mean, y'all have taken some hits over the past few months during the presidential election. And you know it's bad enough when the liberals and the mainstream media come after you. They don't know better. But when our fellow brothers and sisters pile on, well, that's just not right in my book. And I said so publicly back in the election, and I say it here this morning. President Falwell, Liberty University, you have a friend at the Fox News corner of the world. And as we wage this battle for the heart and soul of our great nation, I am mighty proud to share a foxhole with the great patriots here at Liberty. Now, to be perfectly honest, I think that you guys actually confused and confounded the mainstream media. They did not know what to make of a university where students do not burn the American flag or try to silence free speech. There are no designated safe spaces here at Liberty University. And I know this really freaked out the folks at MSNBC, but this is a place of higher learning where they actually stand for the national anthem instead of taking a knee. This is a place where they embrace diversity instead of running around butt naked burning down buildings just because the Constitution gives you a raging microaggression. Now, David, am I allowed to say butt naked? All right, so. Now, for you Northerners out there, nude is what happens when you're in the shower. Butt naked gets you put on the prayer list at the church. So. You can write that down. Now, before I get into the heart of my remarks, I always forget to do this, but I would encourage you to, if you guys are on social networking, you can follow me at Todd Starnes on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook, and I would love for you guys. I don't Snapchat. I don't know whether to snap or chat or do it together. I can't figure that out, but I am on those 2 platforms. I'd like to share a little bit about my background. I am originally from Memphis, Tennessee. And that is where I accepted the Lord Jesus Christ into my heart as a little boy. That's where I was baptized. And my faith flavors everything that I do. I am one of those people President Obama was talking about back in 2007, one of those folks who clings to his guns and clings to his religion. I am one of those folks that Hillary Clinton called a deplorable. And I am proud today to still call myself a gun-toting, Bible-clinging, Constitution-loving son of a Baptist. I'm not bitter, I'm blessed. I'm not irredeemable, I've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. They put some Red Bull on my Fruit Loops backstage, so y'all better buckle up. I I live among the indigenous liberal population of Brooklyn, New York, and I felt that to truly understand the American liberal, I needed to live in their natural habitat. It's sort of like being on the mission field. My neighborhood is populated by vegetarians and yoga shops and farm-to-table restaurants that only serve organic eggs harvested by Amish midwives. They're tasty. As a Southerner, it's been especially hard, and I think you guys might be able to relate to this. There is no sweet tea north of the Mason-Dixon line. I was hoping for an executive order about that from the president, but there is no sweet tea. And when I asked my waiter if they smoked pork butt, he brought me rolling papers and a Bic lighter. But Renaissance is taking place. Revival is taking place in New York City. As I mentioned, we did not have a Chick-fil-A in New York City. Of course, Chick-fil-A, the official chicken of Jesus. But I'm proud to say that just last year they opened a Chick-fil-A across from Fox News. Now, it took a while for some of the New Yorkers to learn how to say my pleasure, but once they did, once they started eating that fried chicken and drinking that sweet tea, it's like revival broke out. People were so much more pleasant. As a matter of fact, they're waving at people with all 5 fingers now in New York instead of 1. Thank you, Chick-fil-A. Well, in the book of Daniel, we find a very interesting story. A story about 3 young men who, if they were here today, would be students at Liberty University. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And you know the story. These young men were ordered to bow down by their government to the statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. But those young men said they would not bow down. The king said, if you don't bow down, we're going to throw you into a big fiery furnace. And they said, King, we're not going to bow down. And even if you throw us into that fiery furnace and our Lord does not deliver us, we're still not going to bow down. You know, I believe that many Americans today are facing what they call Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego moments. Do you obey God or do you obey the government? Well, my friends, I believe that faith and freedom go hand in hand. From the early days of our great nation, we knew that fact to be true. Our founding fathers were having a difficult time trying to find farmers that were willing to stand up and fight the British for our freedom. There was a man in South Carolina at the First Baptist Church of Charleston. His name is Oliver Hart, and he was preaching politics from the pulpit. Imagine that. And he preached about freedom and how we needed to fight for our freedom. And he was such a passionate communicator that our founding fathers sent a delegation down to Charleston, and they commissioned him to go into the upstate to preach that message and to recruit the army that would fight the British. And that's what he did. And I found it interesting that when it came time to fighting for freedom in America, our founding fathers came to the church house first. For the past 8 years, Americans, we've been told that we are the problem, that we are not a Christian nation, that we are not an exceptional nation. Our traditions and our values have been ridiculed and marginalized. We were mocked by Hollywood and dismissed by the academics, marginalized by the mainstream media. But all that changed on Election Day when a man who promised to defend religious liberty, a man who promised to make America great again, became our president. But we still face a very grim landscape across the fruited plain. And over the next few moments, I want to share some of the concerns I have regarding the state of religious liberty in America. This is why I wrote the book, The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again. If Hillary Clinton had won, by the way, the book title would have been called We're Doomed America, Your Guide to the Apocalypse. But fortunately, it worked out for the deplorables. But this book is a guide for us as believers in Jesus Christ, how we can engage the culture as Christian citizens. But right now, we are facing some very troubling times. About a year or so ago, I had the chance to meet Baronelle Stutzman. She's a grandmother out in Washington State. And Baronelle owns a flower shop. She's also a follower of Jesus Christ. She is just like the average grandma that you would see in your local church back home. One day, some longtime customers came into Baronelle's shop, 2 gay men, and they said, we're getting married, and we want you to provide the flowers for our ceremony. And Baronelle, in her sweet Southern Baptist grandmotherly way, clasped the young man's hand. And she said, oh, I can't do that. I can't do it. And she explained why, because she believed that marriage is between one man and one woman. And she said, oh, but I do know some flower shops in the area that would do a wonderful job with your ceremony. But that was not good enough. Those young men filed a complaint, and the state of Washington went after Baronelle Stutzman. They accused her of discriminating against those 2 young men, and they didn't want to just go after her business. The state attorney general decided to make an example out of this elderly grandmother. You see, they filed complaints not just against her business, but they also filed a complaint against her personally. And so if Baronelle loses this case, she will lose her business, her home, and her life savings. She will be put out on the street. I had a chance to talk to Baronelle, and I asked her by telephone, Baronelle, why didn't you just provide the flowers? Nobody would have known. And I can imagine through that telephone receiver, she was wagging her finger at me, and she said, young man, who would you rather follow, God or the government? You see, Baronelle Stutzman was willing to follow God. She was not willing to bow down to the government. Just yesterday, the Washington Supreme Court ruled that Baronelle Stutzman was indeed guilty of discrimination. Her attorneys plan to file an appeal at the Supreme Court. And if she loses that appeal, the lesson in Washington State is that gay rights trump everyone else's rights. And if you do not comply, you will pay a price. And Baronelle Stutzman told me last night, knowing what has happened and knowing what is about to happen, she would not change one single thing because Baronelle Stutzman took a stand. And it's not just Baronelle Stutzman. A few days ago, a mom-and-pop meat packing company in Grand Rapids, Michigan, got a call from the USDA. Apparently, this couple, they're born-again believers, and in their break room of their privately owned company, they have religious material. One day, a USDA inspector, one of the meat inspectors, came by and paid a visit and saw the materials on the table of this privately held company. And the USDA inspector said that he found those materials to be offensive and demanded that they be removed. And if this Christian company refused to remove those documents, they would remove the inspectors and shut down this meat packing company, putting 45 people out of work. So what are we going to do about this? Well, the American Family Association has launched a petition urging President Trump to sign an executive order protecting religious liberty in America. So far, more than 100,000 American citizens have signed this petition. If the president does not issue this executive order, the USDA could put this meat company out of business. Baronelle Stutzman could be put out on the street. So I want to say right here and right now, do the right thing, Mr. President, and secure religious liberty in America. Now, President Reagan said that we're just one generation away from losing our freedom. One generation away. Last November, we came very close. Franklin Graham said we were at a moral tipping point. But I believe that God saw fit to give our nation a second chance. I don't think he's finished with us, folks. And the reason I believe that is because of young men and women like you, the believers here at Liberty University. Young men and women who are unafraid to stand resolute in the face of this very dangerous culture. But I still have hope for America. I still believe that we, the people, can restore what President Obama fundamentally transformed. And I believe that together we can forge a new path. I have hope in America because of a young man named Connor Brewer, a football player at Millikan University. His teammates decided to protest the national anthem by staying inside the locker room during the song. But young Connor chose to stand, and he did so alone on the sidelines. He took a stand. And I have hope in our nation because of young men like Alex Dunn of Fayetteville, North Carolina. His teacher tried to set the American flag on fire in the classroom. And when the flag would not burn, the teacher threw the flag, threw Old Glory on the ground. And suddenly, young Alex, a high school student, a young patriot, jumped up to his feet and ran to the front of the class and snatched that flag up and took it out of the classroom, refusing to let that teacher desecrate the flag any further. Oh, but I have hope. I have hope because of a young cheerleader in Madison, Mississippi. This young girl, standing on the sidelines of a Friday night football game, a federal judge had handed down a ruling against the school district. They said, you cannot do anything remotely religious, and if you do, you will be fined $10,000 for every violation. Well, the high school marching band, they played How Great Thou Art in their halftime routine. And the principal came to those kids and said, kids, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to play that song. We're afraid we might get fined by the government. Well, that Friday night football came, and the lights were bright, and the air was humid in Mississippi. And come halftime, the football players, they ran off that field, and the marching band sat on the sidelines as well. And there was an unusual silence permeating the stadium. No one knew what to do. Well, suddenly, there was a voice, a lone voice of a cheerleader. O Lord, my God, when I in awesome wonder. And then suddenly another voice began to sing, and another and another. People began to rise to their feet in the stadium, and soon the entire area was filled with hundreds and hundreds of people singing, How Great Thou Art, in defiance of their government. You see, the people there in Brandon, Mississippi, they took a stand. And so here in this room, in this place, I have a question this morning. Who among us is willing to take a stand with the Connor Brewers of the world and the Alex Dunns of the world and that young cheerleader in Brandon, Mississippi? Who among us is willing to stand up to our government? You know, they may try to silence our voices. They may try to bully us into submission, but we will not be silent. We must not be bullied. And like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we must not bow down. You see, they took a stand for religious liberty in Mississippi, and it's spreading like wildfire all across the fruited plain. Bonhoeffer once said these words, silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act. And my friends, I believe today, right now, this is a Bonhoeffer moment for every Bible-believing Christian in America. God's little lambs can no longer be silent. We are to be civil lambs, but not silent lambs. And as my friends, the Benham brothers once said, we must roar like the lions. The time has come for all of us to stand together, the Baptist and the Wesleyan, the Presbyterian and the Pentecostal, the Catholic and the Calvinist, and with one voice declare that we are one nation under God. I love films, I love movies, and You guys are putting out some incredible filmmakers here at Liberty University. There's one of my favorite movies called We Were Soldiers, starring Mel Gibson. It's about the Vietnam War, a story about the Battle of the La Drang Valley. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore and his Army Rangers were surrounded, and the enemy was advancing. All appeared hopeless. We know the severity of the situation those brave men faced because there was a reporter there from United Press International, a man by the name of Joe Galloway. He was caught in this melee, surrounded. There was nowhere to go. And when the bullets started flying, the reporter dropped to the ground. Well, in the middle of all of this chaos and all of this carnage, Sergeant Major Basil Plumley stood resolute. And with a name like Basil Plumley, I have no doubt he was resolute. He walked over and saw the reporter on the ground, and he delivered a swift kick of his boot to his backside. And he told the terrified journalist, "You can't see nothing from down there, sonny." And he tossed the reporter a rifle. But the reporter rejected the weapon. And he told the sergeant major that he was a non-combatant. And the sergeant major looked at that terrified journalist and said these words, "There ain't no such thing today, sonny." You know, I said I had hope in America, and I do. But the main reason I have hope is because my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. You know, David, we talk about the truth. That's what reporters do, get to the truth of the matter. That's what we're supposed to do. But let me tell you some honest truth this morning. Jesus Christ can radically change your life. And there may be somebody here who doesn't know Jesus, doesn't know how he can change and impact your life. He can make you whole again. There might be somebody here searching this morning, searching for answers. We seem to think sometimes that you come to a Christian school, everybody's a believer. Well, that's not the case. We know that. But I'm here to tell you something this morning. If you're looking for that answer, Jesus Christ can change your life. Invite him into your heart this morning, and he will give you purpose and meaning and direction. He will fill that emptiness inside of you. You say, "Todd, how do you know that?" Because Jesus did it to me. And let me tell you something, I was a sinner, saved by grace. You know, a lot of people will say, "I have plenty of time for that. I have plenty of time for a relationship with the Lord. I can get that together later on in life." Well, you can't take anything for granted, my friends. In 2005, when I was anchoring the news out in California, I went to the doctor thinking I had, you got some Californians here. I went to the doctor thinking I had a little touch of bronchitis. My doctor told me, "Todd, you got about 2 or 3 weeks to live." It turned out my aortic heart valve was beginning to fail, and at the age of 37 years old, I had to have open heart surgery. I have a mechanical aortic heart valve clicking inside of me right now. You think I went to the doctor thinking that everything was going to be hunky-dory? All of a sudden, I was faced with an issue in my life where I didn't know what was going to happen the next day. I thought I had my life all planned out. And here I was, and they popped me open like a Thanksgiving Day turkey. I mean, that's tough. So don't take anything for granted, my friends. Don't take anything for granted. And I know that Pastor David and his incredible team here, if you have questions about who Jesus is and what he can do for you and your life, I'm sure they will be more than happy to answer those questions. I would be honored to answer those questions for you. And I'm going to be down here in just a little bit signing books. But if you want to talk about that, that's the most important thing this morning, is your relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, in closing, I want to go back to that scene in the La Drang Valley where the army was surrounded and all appeared hopeless. You see, the army won the day in spite of fierce opposition, in spite of hundreds and hundreds of the enemy advancing. They won the day. And why did they win the day? Because they stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder. They stood resolute, and they fought together as one unit. And I leave you with these words today, Liberty University. My fellow countrymen, we are surrounded. The cultural bullets are flying. The enemies of freedom are advancing, and the time has come for all of us to stand resolute. You say, Todd, I'm not a fighter. Well, there ain't no such thing today, Sonny, because we are freedom's last line of defense. So do not hide liberty's light under a bushel. No, hold it high, and let the flame of freedom burn bright for all the world to see. You see, it's time for every gun-toting, Bible-clinging, deplorable American to take a thunderous stand for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And let our prayer be on this day that our great nation will once again be that shining city on a hill. God bless you all, and God bless America. Thank you.